One of the big things, of course, and where we have this noted here is think before we speak. The more planning we can do, obviously, more thought out we are in our presentation, and especially in crisis time frame. So the agenda for this afternoon, we are going to cover stages of crisis communication, talk about some truths, and then actually go into the components of what a crisis communications plan should consist. So to start out with, the 6 stages of crisis communication, this very specifically from Dr. Robert Chandler, who is an internationally renowned crisis communication expert. First off, warning. Some areas of communication do come across with a warning ahead of time. As example, snowstorms, any types of those, weather type of situations. Other incidents have subtle or no warning, like power outages or workplace violence, that type of thing. In situations like those with no with no warning, organizations may bypass the communication completely and just, during that warning stage. Risk assessment, in moments after an incident occurs and or is reported, the crisis management team assembles to determine how to handle the situation. Really activating the organization's emergency response plan, procedures, and really getting people geared to actually move forward with the communication, getting executives, officials apprised of the situation, and even the local law enforcement and other organizations, even with similar situations. The response phase or stage is really once the emergency response plan has been activated, that crisis communications or crisis team begin to notify the general public about the incident. Really this, making people aware of the incident, providing instruction, calling first responders into action, those really components there. From the management perspective, this is really where you're managing the situation, getting those status updates out there, increasing your audience, including additional people who are more involved, getting your vendors involved that might need to be in there, controlling rumors if those are beginning to happen. I really like to look at this as a checklist on yourselves. How are we doing? If things are going well, good. If they're not going well, then here's the place to start to make those changes. Resolution here, that stage. This is where your all clear alerts come in. Message of reassurance to those after the crisis is resolved, really kind of the drawing of conclusion. And then your recovery stage, this is where you're really focused on the healing, getting back to normal operations. One of the things here would be to start to pull EAP in for crisis counseling. Also in here, talk about the accomplishments, what went well, and celebrate those accomplishments. From the emotional responses, kind of taking those stages and putting them to the grief perspective, you're really talking here to the shock and denial, anger, bargaining, despair, acceptance. Really all of those stages are tied to a specific emotion, and all of that is accepted and completely normal. And each of those stages will go through at different speeds for different people. So kind of talking through some of the truths that come into the crisis communications, you've got your negative effects of cognitive response. Again, think of what to say and how to say it in the middle of a crisis leads to the possibility of mixed or erroneous messages. Having things planned ahead of time really gives you more of that concept of, I'm going to go into the set it and forget it, or really referring to what you have planned and using that. yes, there are changes that need to be made based on whatever the particular situation is, but if you have that pre-planned, you have your messages predetermined, you can keep them from being either too long, too short, not addressing particular relevant information, that type of thing. Of course, the biggest thing is a wrong message can contribute to existing panic and confusion. During a crisis, the reading levels decrease 4 grade levels. So that really is something that you want to plan for as you are creating scripts and that type of thing, that you want to not have those scripts be set for a doctorate level. You want to be able to look at that time of stress and also identify positive statements to balance negative pieces. So again, plan in those perspectives, because negativity does definitely dominate those messages. So if something does come across negative, then really look at it as you've got to have 4 positives to balance out that one negative. Now, your workforce may vary in geographic location, languages, and economic resources. So really look to your message's effectiveness and look at that from a written language as well as the verbal. Foreign language comes into this. Really look at your audience and their education level. Again, kind of talking to that piece of dropping 4 grade levels. If you're writing things at a doctorate level perspective and your community is maybe only high school graduates, or they are of another language as their primary language, then how much of that message is actually being understood? Another one here is key personnel may not be available due to scheduled absences or illness or even impact based on whatever the crisis is. You may have specific people unavailable to you. So if that's the case, who makes decisions if the CEO is unavailable? Who is the person to actually determine a crisis is being determined and we are going to activate our business continuity plan, including our crisis communications? Another thing here is what happens to payroll if half the accounting team falls ill due to a pandemic outbreak. If you have those procedures already pre-planned in those processes, then everybody can jump in and still be able to perform and not be at the situation's mercy. So in that sense, what is your succession plan? Include crisis communications in that. Business reputations may suffer. Thing here to think about is you're going to be under a microscope. Poorly articulated or worded answers to questions can affect an organization's survival post-crisis. And then, of course, the perception that an organization behaved competently during a crisis is key to recovery. A couple of examples to kind of throw in here that I was grabbing onto is Tiger Woods. Communication, his communications really went awry. Once press broke the story of the scandal, really pain kept piling on and he started losing key sponsors. With a crisis communication plan in place, you can move more quickly to admit failure, discuss your solutions, stay on message, and keep the media in check. This really could have made a huge difference for him managing the problem and protecting the integrity of his sponsors and himself. But once a victim of the press, it's difficult to regain that positive reputation. And then another example here that is really very close, very recent here, is Paula Deen. With the size of her business empire, really shouldn't she have people working for her to address her communication needs? Planning for, time to prepare for everything in order to have things, I guess, not YouTubed by the specific person. Now, a good example, though, can generally be seen in consumer product safety, product recalls, and even medication, that type of recall. Either way, though, foundation comes from having a clearly defined and practiced, and I really focus on that word practice, crisis communications plan. Your crisis communication professionals should be staff that's prepared ahead of time, not someone who's sought out after a crisis is actually in place. So a key point here is due to stress and related factors caused by an emergency, communication during a crisis is much more complex than routine communication. So if you have a good communication plan just in your regular day-to-day routine, you've got people already trained and planned. Take that just to the next level and add that complexity to deal in that crisis time frame as well. So obviously a need for a crisis communication plan is evident. We all have those impacts of weather events, insider threats, fraud, data breach, identity theft, any of that. The best thing to do is to be able to not have to react. Acting is just such a better place to be. So your problem identification, of course, the biggest threat in a crisis is the desire to do nothing. Sitting back and doing nothing is not going to keep anybody informed at all. There's definitely the fear that we shouldn't run off half-cocked, followed by the series of memos, plans, and presentations that make people feel like something's being done. Having something pre-planned, you're not in that half-cocked mode. Well, a well-developed crisis communications plan builds member confidence. It reduces staff and stakeholder, member, vendor, all of those people concerns. It is prepared in advance and allows you to tell your story first. That being so you have control of the message, reducing the amount of erroneous information and also putting the brakes on those rumor mills. One of the things to really keep in mind, of course, as we continue to develop with the social media, is include that in there as well, because there's a real big place for those rumor mills to begin or to, I guess, feed. Establishing your crisis communications plan. Here, create the emphasis by dedicating a section in your business continuity plan for communications. You've got a team already. Generally, everyone has a marketing team, and again, communications is included in that. So taking that piece and just emphasizing and adding to from the crisis perspective is honestly not that much more to add on to what's already existing. Develop your plan holistically. Input from all levels of the organization not only addresses things to make sure that you have something that's comprehensible, but it also even goes to that comment in there about addressing your audience issues and looking at who your listeners are, what's your audience for, you know, the demographics and your education levels. Staff throughout, if they can understand it, then hopefully that's going to help identify some of those pieces as you're building it out for the members and other audiences. Educate your staff on plan components. Who is the dedicated spokesperson? Make sure that they know up front who the dedicated spokesperson is, and then if there is a change because you've had something occur and you've had to go into your succession plan and somebody else is the dedicated spokesperson, make sure that at that time of crisis that everybody is aware this is the person who is designated to speak on behalf of this situation. If I as an employee am approached, then what is it that I should be saying? Give me something up front instead of having me be the deer in the headlights, not knowing what to say. Let me know that I need to refer someone to Susie, and then I'm set with something to say. And then also make sure that they are educated on the policy of social media posting. More and more organizations have their own Facebook pages. If it's okay for someone to post, let them know that, or if you would prefer not, which is the better way to go, so again, you can have somebody else control that message, make sure they know up front that, again, whoever the person is who's posting on their behalf, or on behalf of the credit union, is that they are actually the ones responsible for the Facebook postings or updates, that type of thing. And then, of course, exercise the plan. We're all well-versed in how to evacuate a building because we're familiar, we've been doing it over and over and over again. Same thing with the crisis communications. The more exercised and more familiar people are with the plan, then the more comfortable they are in actually moving forward with utilizing it.
And Michele, can I stop you just for a second? We've had several questions about social media, and it sounds like your suggestion is to, ask employees not to post anything. But just if you could expand on that maybe a bit. The first question is regarding social media. What policy do you recommend?
So from a policy for Facebook or any type of social media perspective is really, I guess, to say what is it that your organization is planning to do. And if you have, again, taking marketing as being the centralized place for communication, if I know that my marketing department is responsible for any of that message, then I wouldn't want anybody else in the organization to be posting on behalf of the credit union, because then we are putting out mixed message and then taking away that control from those who are actually overseeing. They have an understanding of what is happening with the crisis. They are being the ones that are getting the appropriate updates and when those updates are taking place. So in that sense, having that policy in place and, to have a specific, do you have a specific thing around, Facebook, or do you have something that's just inclusive in your communications plan that also addresses Facebook or other social media pieces? I would say that would be the preference. Sharon, were there others that were around that, or did that kind of sum up everything?
I think that sums it up. I mean, the second one was, can you ask employees not to post anything on their personal social media sites?
And I would absolutely say yes, but also include that in that training up front so that I know as an employee that the overall expectation from the credit union is that I not post, but then at the time of crisis, remind me. Because based on stress levels and, just the drama around everything, am I going to remember what the actual procedure is? Very likely not. So in that sense, when staff is being notified that a crisis is in place, we're activating our plan, etc., then a reminder to them of what the policy/procedure is on behalf of the credit union so that they're reminded not to.
Okay, perfect. And just I think one last one that's still on the social media topic, how do you explain that to an employee? Meaning why can't they post info to their page?
I think the big thing is that we want to be able to maintain control of the message by whatever the crisis team is, and to make sure that we're getting updates out appropriately, and also to be able to control who the questions are coming from. I mean, if I'm getting questions from specific avenues, I want to make sure that I'm also updating those specific avenues. So if I don't know that questions are coming in from certain people, then I don't know necessarily to then give them a further update or a further response.
Okay, terrific. Thanks. That seems like all the questions on that topic.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Good questions. So communication plan elements, things to really look to include. Leadership, I have this bolded because really ultimately it is the most critical. You can't have a strategic or a contingency plan for everything. Planning is a valuable exercise, but really what is needed is leadership. The more time and resource spent on training leaders on how to use the plan during an exercise, or not even an exercise, a crisis, is really that critical piece. So you've got your policies and procedures to have included in that. Clearly defined communication channels, listing and when and how to use them. So if channels that are appropriate are Facebook, Twitter, phone updates, any of those things, include those in the plan so that you don't oops and miss one of those channels. You know, things can be overlooked. It's very easy, especially when you're in a stressful time frame. Again, have your designated spokesperson and an alternate. Again, that person could end up being impacted or could even just be on vacation. And you want to be able to still have someone moving forward and keeping people you know, apprised of the situation. So when that comes to that training, of course, don't forget to also include that alternate in any of that training. Have scripts predetermined based on risk assessment. Whatever those things are that are most critical to you, have those things written out. If a snowstorm is the most likely thing that's going to happen for you, then it's really quite easy to go through and have those items already addressed. We're going to be closed, we're closing early, we're opening for opening on a late delay, any of that type of stuff, any of those things that you can have pre-set or pre-scripted, then all you have to do is make some small modifications based on the situation you're in at that time. Also including that pre-printed signage. We already have a lot of those things in place for reasons for, say, office closures because there's a holiday. Again, those things that we know, if we can have those pre-printed, it's going to be a lot more professional than grabbing a Sharpie and a piece of paper out of the printer and just writing on there, closed Martin Luther King Day. Call an emergency contact list. Have all of that information readily available to you. You don't want to be digging in a phone book or, you know, checking on cell phones and all of that, trying to locate, do you have so-and-so's number? Do you have so-and-so's number? Instead, have that all readily available to you, and including your media. But I do recommend having a separate media directory. That way, again, you're looking at specific media pieces versus who are those people that I'm getting a hold of in an emergency, that type of situation. And then, of course, having a critical contact list and log. So if you do get that phone call from Channel 9 News or whatever the media is, again, if you have those questions that you need to follow up on, you're noting those, keeping track of them, and then you're able to respond or get back to somebody as you're promising. So again, include that too. If you're telling somebody you're going to get back to them within 2 hours, make sure you're actually keeping up on that promise. So notification here really is kind of the beginning, your most critical part of the whole recovery process. It is the hardest to control. Thus the reason we're saying plan for it. That way you have more of that already under your belt. Proper sequence is vital. You can't rely on just procedures. Again, conduct the drills. Procedures are wonderful. They get you set as to what it is that you need to be doing. But the more you practice, then the more you have increased that muscle memory and you know what to do. And then you need to have tools to be effective. Call trees, scripts, response sheets, any of those things that are helpful to you. If you have phone numbers that people can call in to update and get updates for, you know, conference lines, any of those tools, make sure that you have those included in that procedure and when and how to use them. Typical call tree here. Ultimately, starting at the top, you've got your first alert. Whoever it is that gets that notification, they then notify the crisis communications or the crisis management team. Crisis management team then filters that out and going into critical vendors and then also the direction of the media. Get your department heads, team leaders, and branch managers informed. And then from there, those people are then taking it down to the next level of including the supervisors, vendors, team members, employees, and then the employees on the other side. So ultimately, the thing is to have something in place as a call tree as what the expectation is so that you can effectively get the message out and updates as well. A lot of organizations are using more and more with phone systems and texting to get the message out as a one and done instead of using the call tree. However, there are still a lot of good uses for call trees, and also even looking at it going in both directions. Looking from the employee perspective, if I'm looking for updates, who should I be getting in touch with? Should I call the CEO directly? No. Instead, I should be contacting my supervisor or my branch manager, however it's appropriate. But again, that training for staff of what to do and how to utilize the call tree is really key, because otherwise this document, if I have something just sitting in front of me at the time of a crisis, for one, do I even know how to read it? I'm not 100% certain. So train folks on what their expectation is. Have a command center set up, and have this set up in multiple locations. And multiple locations in the case that you may need to change. If your boardroom is your #1 location, that's wonderful, but if that boardroom is impacted and you're unable to get to it, then what are my alternates? So other places that you may use, a local environment, be it a hotel or maybe another branch. Also a remote location, which could also be a hotel or a branch. Another one that's really coming in more and more as being a helpful tool is a virtual location, being able to meet via conference bridge. With more and more branches being in even other states and all of that, you still may need to be able to pull everyone together. So having that virtual option is definitely a good one to have in place. But again, practice it. Make sure everybody's aware of exactly how to utilize it and what those pieces are that may end up being a challenge. Have that command center with easy access. So again, if it's a branch or something like that, you want to make sure that there's adequate parking, that you're able to get to it. If you need to have maps available for folks so they know how to get to that specific location, again, having that easy access is definitely important for them. And then communication needs to address within that command center multiple phones. Worst thing that you could have is only just one phone, because then you're not able to, have more of that command center perspective of being able to address multiple calls coming in from different areas. You don't want to miss out on that update that, power is now restored or something else has gone wrong. You want to be able to get those updates. Whiteboards or even paper so you can keep track, up on as a visual. So not just the paper on the desktop. Have that something up on the walls so you can see the visual and be able to address things and everybody has an idea of everything that's going on. Separate rooms. You may have the need to separate out for different conversations. Definitely the crisis management team needs to be separate from the rest of the management team so that, again, there's that, I guess, ability to communicate and not have so many cooks in the kitchen, if you will. And then definitely you want to have internet connectivity. That for being able to look up phone numbers for just a really easy one, but if you have people joining for virtual conference bridge, anything that way, internet access anymore is imperative. You want to be able to see Facebook updates if those are coming in, have access to your business continuity plans, have access to vendors, websites, et cetera, et cetera. Something else to really keep in mind is to have a scribe. There's absolutely one of the greatest things you could have is someone who is able to keep notes and keep things on track. So that scribe should really be someone who has an understanding of what the plan is able to say, you know what, we haven't done a communications update in 2 hours, and we said that we were going to do it within 2 hours, so hurry up, let's get this going, or we have missed the ball on our promises. Needs for leaders. take a moment. Honestly, take a moment and breathe, just to have an understanding of what you're dealing with. Acting promptly and not hurriedly. And then manage the expectations. Exhibit control, and then stay loose and be flexible. The biggest thing, of course, is you've planned, but if something isn't exactly the way you've planned it, you still have to be able to, I guess, be flexible in order to still accommodate for the situation. So in that case, still, back to that perspective of train your leaders so they can lead. The more training, the more able you are to be flexible. One of the things here that I really liked is, back in 2009, Captain Sullenberger was really known for landing the U.S. Airway flight on the Hudson River, and he's really known for that miracle on the Hudson. One of the things that he noted was, forcing himself to use training and force calm on the situation. Had that planning and practice not happened, then that ability to see in himself and to actually sit back and say, I need to force this, then how many people on that jetliner, would have ended up not surviving? And on that just right there goes to that miracle on the Hudson. And so with that, planning and practice turns into miracles over and over again. And there are so many that we can all quote and remember, even just lately with the tornado in oh my goodness, I just completely have drawn a blank. But anyway, the tornado, and there were a lot of employees and tellers that were in a vault. And again, based off of training, that wasn't specific to crisis communications itself, but just to that crisis and planning and being able to use what you know, that muscle memory, to create those miracles. Establishing a spokesperson, or again, persons. Identifying that person and an alternate. One versus many. And really this goes into the ability to have one voice, one understanding, one message. Yes, there may be a need to turn something over if a crisis is, if you're having to do updates throughout a 24-hour period, you definitely want to make sure that somebody's getting rest. So do you need to turn over the communication? There needs to be a formal turnover if that does occur. So now instead of Susie being the spokesperson, now John's going to come in and give you updates, and in that sense, keeping it focused. And then those spokespersons, though, need to absolutely be in good communication and good turnover within themselves so that there aren't mixed messages. Your most senior manager may not be best suited for the role. There's nothing wrong at all in determining that someone isn't suited for being a crisis communicator. There are other skills that people carry that even have them in that senior management. So just because somebody's a senior manager doesn't necessarily make them best suited for that communicating piece. And then again, obtain media training, and practice makes perfect. Some of the people that I look at as established spokespersons, marketing or a public relations person, VP of operations, a branch manager, basically that branch manager being of an affected area, and that's really if it's appropriate at that particular time frame or with that situation. A CEO really should be considered as speaking only if there is something good to say. Some people even ask on a regular basis, why is it that the CEO can't be the person speaking for the credit union? Because he's the most knowledgeable representation of the credit union. Big thing that I have to say with that, and in response to that, is designating a spokesperson that's other than the CEO conveys confidence in others leadership, and it really ultimately gives the CEO the ability to focus on the crisis as it develops, letting he or she lead and oversee the crisis itself instead of having to wear multiple hats and doing multiple things. The CEO absolutely, though, is included in any of the planning. The scripts are, signed off or overseen by the CEO, so there's, it's not that the CEO isn't aware of what is being said. And again, if there's something good to say, absolutely, allow the CEO to get out there and send that good message. Media interviews, there is no off the record. As soon as it's said, it's on the record. There's tape rolling, pencils are being used. Once it's said, it is part of the record. The camera never stops rolling. Look at the reporter, not the camera. So talk to the person, not to the camera. For one, there's that deer in the headlights. You can take the lead rather than waiting for the next question. So again, if you have those scripts pre-prepared, it's your message. You're not waiting for that media to say what they want to say. Instead, it's the message that you want to have said that's coming across. Rephrase questions. Gives you a couple seconds to think about the answer, and it makes a good little soundbite. You're the one, again, that's saying it. Depending on how things are clipped, you might say it, and you never even hear the media personnel speak. Stick to your key points regardless of the reporter questions. So again, having those things pre-scripted, you're able to get across what you want to have said. And local news is usually your friend. National news agencies are much less so. You work with your local news on I'm going to say a day-to-day basis, but on that regular basis. And so including them, even in some of your tests and exercises, it's great for them as a training tool as well. They're able to understand what you have in place and help you get your message out to the community within your area. Some of the key points for media interviews, things to include in that is we appreciate your concern. Human health and safety are our primary focus at this moment. We've activated our business continuity plan, disaster recovery plans. We'll continue to service our members, community, whatever, addressing employee situations, whatever it is during the situation. And absolutely take the opportunity to note something that you're doing extraordinary here. If you have extra water that's come in, make that note. Or if maybe you have an emergency site where you're allowing for evacuation people or pets to come in, any of those things. If you've got something great, share it. Get it out there in the media so that, honestly, it's a great marketing tool for you that now your name is out there as a do-good. And then note when you're going to have more information available, whether it's shortly, in an hour, etc. But be as specific as you can. And again, keep up with that promise that you're noting. Speed of response here often is referred to as the golden hour. It's comparable to the medical golden hour, and really, as we all see the person who's treated right away with CPR, and they're more likely to have survival than someone who is not treated with that immediate response. So if your crisis response is off to a rapid start, your chances for reputation damage decrease. So really kind of thinking of that speed of response. So having those communication scripts already in place, things to have included in that is that they're easily understood. Again, looking to your audience, taking it down those 4 grade levels so that all are able to understand. They're created and approved prior to a crisis. And then they are meant to convey confidence and restore order. So we just have a little sample one here that I have noted is for a robbery script. Employee safety is our #1 priority. The branch is currently closed while investigators complete their work. We'll continue to give you updates as we have more news. It's very honest, it's brief, it's easily understood. Key messages really here, keep messages simple and easy to understand. Repetition is absolutely okay. You want to make sure that you're getting it across. Be consistent in your messaging. Be upfront regarding any confidential information. If something has been leaked, don't hide it. Be upfront. Make sure people know that information has been leaked and what it is that you're doing in order to restore that negative. So again, talking back to earlier, one negative, you're looking at 4 positives to overcome that one negative. So just kind of keep that in mind if you are in that situation of confidential information being leaked. And then speak to the specific audience and concerns. Something that a coworker of mine mentioned, he had gone to a Dale Carnegie seminar, and one of the things that came out of that is, you know, when you really want to get your point across, think of what you want to say as if it's $100 a word. We're all very focused on how much money we spend in budgets. When it comes to words, again, same thing. How much do we want to spend, and getting across that message as best we can to get that message, you know, across to anyone and everyone that we want to get that to. So a quick communication checklist here, just to kind of go over a lot of these points and kind of tie things together here, is alert the spokesperson. If I'm the spokesperson for the organization, for one, I should be noted ahead of time that I would be a spokesperson, but also at the time of the crisis. Make sure that it's designated. There should be no assumptions. I shouldn't assume that I'm going to be this person to speak, because there are alternates. So if I am the one, let me know it right up front. Gather facts, who, what, when, where, and why, how many, all of that. Make sure that you're dealing with the specifics. Get a press release out within that golden hour. Notify the stakeholders, staff, members, board, employees, anybody who would be involved, even vendors. Make sure communications include any changes in services. If there are certain systems that are down, if I can't get to ATMs, if there are certain branches that are unavailable, make sure those things are communicated. Tell it all, tell it fast, and tell the truth. That's the biggest thing, of course, is make sure that it is truthful. Don't get defensive, no matter how tough things get. And then be prepared with company information packets. If there are, again, certain branches involved, if there are alternate avenues to be able to get information, if you have off-site call centers, different phone numbers to call, I can get to different ATM, shared branching, any of those things, have that stuff available. And then professional crisis communications support, having that available. Ongoing strategies, develop and maintain a vision. Communicate and get others to join in with that. When it comes to the communications piece, it should be early and often. And again, to that social media place, make it your friend. You know, embrace Facebook, embrace Twitter. They are absolutely excellent tools to be able to get that message out and take advantage of that golden hour. I like to look at this as a rest and glucose plan. Really, the whole thing being is good food keeps glucose levels at a good place. So having something already planned with making sure people are getting the nourishment that they need and the rest that they need should be included within your actual plan. You know, making a staff chart to talk through who is available, who isn't available, and what times, and making sure that you've got them with some rest is one of the best things that can come in, because otherwise decisions aren't going to be made well. And as Regina Phelps noted in a presentation she did that I was in on, was best decision makers are the ones that know when not to trust themselves. And that's one of the best things that you can do, is to be able to look at yourself and realize, you know what, I'm exhausted. or whatever, and I'm not making good decisions. So best time for me to honestly raise my hand and say, I need help, and that's a best decision maker. Where do we go from here? And then learning from the mistakes. So if there are mistakes that are going through in your communications plan, as you know, Tiger Woods, Paula Deen, any of these people who have been in some of the scrutinized by the media for how they are communicating, that's one of the things that they can really kind of look back to is, you know, can we learn from our mistakes and then not repeat it? A couple of quotes that I like here in the crisis response. Take control of what you can control, and that's your business. And then any of the planning that goes to your business really, you know, again, talks to that. You have the control of the planning. You have the control to make sure that you're testing and training people on what the plans are that are being put in place. And then, of course, nothing succeeds like the appearance of success. The more you appear to succeed, the better off you are. A good leader absolutely has an excellent appearance of success, and they are showing success within their staff as well. So as just kind of the final slide here, do you have a communication plan included in your business continuity program?
Okay, great. Hey, thanks, Michele, so much. We do have a couple of questions, and if anyone else in the audience has questions, please, you know, feel free to chat them into us. The first one, what kind of media training do you recommend? Are there any resources you prefer?
You know, one of the things, I have actually been asked that a number of times, and one of the things I even look to is what is your community, you know, what's available in your community itself. If you have a good relationship with local media personnel, that would be something that you could include. There are a lot of things that are even online tools. There are other, you know, full-on courses. So I think a lot of it really turns into looking at the person who is the designated spokesperson and then what those needs are. And I honestly have a hard time saying that there's ever enough training.
Okay, great. One other, it's actually more of a comment that I thought was pretty good. One way to avoid mixed messages is to remind employees not to post anything specific, but feel free to share postings made on the official credit union's Facebook page or official credit union tweets. What are your thoughts on that, Michele?
I absolutely, I guess I do like that. The thing, of course, is then in any of that social media piece is you want to make sure that somebody is actually managing it too, because again, an employee may put something out there that you don't want to have out there, and so you want to be able to manage that and be able to pull something down if it's not appropriate.
Okay, thank you. And another kind of a follow-up question to the media training, they were wondering if there was anything specific they should search for in terms of, you know, online media training.
You know, the thing that I have done with looking into things is really crisis communications training. There are some things put on by Disaster Recovery Journal, the I-Corps. It's there are a number. I would really look at it as what are the accredited type of training. And again, you may have something as a local community college or something in that way, but I would really look at it as crisis communications.
Okay, thank you. And just as a side note, in my former life, when I was VP of Marketing at a credit union, we happened to use a public relations firm, and even if you weren't a client of theirs, they would offer media training as, you know, kind of one of their one-off products. So if you're able to invest a little money, you know, a professional public relations firm can definitely be helpful. And it looks like the last question we have, and I just want to remind everyone, it was whether these slides will be made available. And yes, we are going to be posting both the slides and a recorded version of this webinar on our website. So I will make sure that the link to both of those is emailed out to everyone later today. Michele, did you have any closing thoughts?
You know, really the closing thought, of course, is make sure that you have that communications plan included in your continuity plan or your continuity program. And I just can't stress enough, you know, test, train, and educate. That's, you know, having staff informed as to what the plan is the best piece that comes into play. And that way you're not reacting inappropriately. You're able to act appropriately.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much, Michele, and thank you, everyone, for attending.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone.